Todd Nelson with Hays Post, visiting with Curtis Hammeke, Athletic Director at Fort Hays State University here in Hays, Kansas. A good day to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Todd.
Full name for everybody to get started.
Curtis John Hammeke.
And where were you born and raised, Curtis John?
I was originally born in McPherson, Kansas, actually, and one of 9 kids. I'm number 8 in that mix. 6 boys, 3 girls. Actually grew up in Great Bend, but I was born in McPherson. We moved to Great Bend when I was about 4 or 5 years old.
City kid, farm life. What was
Started
it?
out in the farm, and then came to the big city of Great Bend when we moved off the farm. So grew up, went all the way through school in Great Bend.
So a lot of siblings. What was your upbringing like with that many kids around?
Competitive, at least at the dinner table. But no, the younger 3 of us were all boys, so we kind of grew up in I guess sections where some of my older brothers and sisters are almost more like aunts and uncles to me, because we weren't necessarily didn't grow up together so much, or such a span between us. I think there's 20 years between my oldest brother and my younger brother. So,
and interests and hobbies as a young fella?
Well, a lot of sports, obviously, and that hasn't changed over the years. So we were brought up pretty athletically, and we lived across the street from the school. So our backyard was the playground at the school, and the basketball goals over there, and baseball fields, and so primarily a lot of that, and some fishing. I mean, we were outdoor people and enjoyed that a lot, but primarily just on the playground, a lot of sports.
Tell me a little bit about the education and the years of schooling, high school, and where you went from there.
Yeah, coming out of high school, in the family that I grew up in, my dad was in the oil field, and my older brother became a mailman, and a couple of my other brothers got into the oil field then and followed through there. So actually, being number 8, ironically, I was the first one to go through and to go to college. So it was a different change, and I think the carrot for me to go to college was so that I continued playing baseball, and so sports had a big role in that, and the fact that I even went on to pursue higher education was driven by the fact that I wanted to continue in athletics. So that was a different change from our family. Grew up working in our summer jobs. I would work in the oil field as well, and had a lot of background in that, but ended up where we were was to go to school. I went to Barton County for a couple of years there at home, and then came here to Fort Hays. So this is actually my 3rd stint in Hays, America. Came here originally as a junior in college, played 2 years of baseball here, finished out my career here, played a couple of years for the Larks actually, and upon graduation here, then had the opportunity eventually to come back here and coach. Now that was several years later after coaching again at Barton County and the like, and we came back here, graduated here in '85, came back here in '91 to coach Tiger baseball. Did that till '96, and then that's when I became fully involved in administration. Actually went back to Great Bend High School as an athletic director, was my first administrative job, and then spent 5 years at Butler County Community College in El Dorado as athletic director, and then went over to Newman University in Wichita for a year, and I was just there a year when the athletic director position came open here, and that's when I returned to Hays. That was a difficult decision. All of them were. In far moving the family and the like is challenging at times when your kids are different ages and trying to decide whether to stay put or move on, and so we did have the opportunity to come back to Hays, but it was after just 1 year at Newman, which was difficult to leave there. We were moving them from NAIA into Division II at the time. Was a beautiful place to work and enjoying that, but this was the alma mater, and that was time number 3. So that's been 9 years ago, Todd, that we came back to Hays.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So quite a few years altogether in Hays.
You mentioned your family.
Yeah.
Let's talk about today's family.
Mm-hmm.
Who are those folks?
Well, my wife and Ed actually, one of my first jobs out of college, I actually had majored in physical education, but I'd minored in communication. So one of my first couple of jobs, I wanted to be a coach, but my first opportunity professionally was in sports writing. So I was a sports writer up in Grand Island, Nebraska, and she was a women's basketball coach. That's where I first met her, in Central City, which was about 20 miles from Grand Island. So I like to say I rescued her from Nebraska and brought her home to Kansas. But so you know, so that's my wife Annette. She's from Dwight, Nebraska.
She must have been grateful you had kids.
That's right. Well, she's changed my life, obviously. You know, as we all can look to our spouses
Absolutely.
for that. It's hard telling where we'd be without them, but certainly, you know, she was a special education teacher, and we moved back to Great Bend, and started out at Barton County Community College as a baseball coach and sports information director, and she was teaching special ed, and we had our first child, Andy, there in Great Bend, and then we had Alicia, our daughter. So we have 3 kids, Andy, Alicia, and Nick. And they're about 2 years apart.
Right.
Nicholas is our youngest one, and he's a freshman here at Fort Hays right now. Alicia's about to, she will graduate next year in elementary education, to hoping to be a teacher. And our son Andy graduated from Fort Hays last spring in physical education, and then he's currently in the seminary and up north of St. Joe. It's called Conception, Missouri, located between St. Joe and Maryville, Missouri.
Home of my wife.
Home of your wife. Maryville is.
Ironically enough. No, Conception.
Conception.
I mean, right there at the Abbey, buddy.
Is that right? That is amazing.
True story. Her parents' farm is about 3 miles from the Abbey. It's just right outside of town.
That's a beautiful area.
I've been there. It's very nice.
So he's in his first year of seminary up there and doing well.
Well, let's talk about the now real quick. You're man, I can only imagine the busyness with that many different things under your direction, frankly. Let's talk about the year. You've had some pretty cool highlights, facilities especially.
You know, everybody's busy. I mean, everybody's running around crazy and has their busy times and their different aspects of their job. So I think this year, it seems like as an athletic director, every year or every 2 years, you kind of cycle through in what it is you're really focusing on that year. For example, on one year it might be personnel. You might be having some changes in personnel coaching-wise. That's a very time-consuming process in the process of hiring new staff and this and that. So you may have a year where you're really strongly focused on that. You may have a year where you're focused a lot on your budget or on your fundraising or your marketing or your just internal operations, some things that need to be adjusted. So it varies from year to year. One year it was upgrading our transportation and our fleet and our buses and those type of things. But this last year, actually, for at least the last year, has been really concentrated on facilities. We've had a lot of, we've become into the cycle where it's time again to renovate or improve our existing facilities, and that's happened. I think about every 10 years you're going to get in that cycle, and it's very time demanding, I guess. Started out a couple of years ago, Todd, when we replaced the bleachers in Groves Coliseum.
Right.
With the new chairback seating that we had, which turned out fantastic. And then it was time to replace our Coliseum floor, which was another major project, and the track around it in there. So we replaced that just last year. Now this year we've gotten into it's been an ongoing project starting since the fall, and that is the indoor training facility that we're building, courtesy of Bickles and Schmitz, and their generosity to make that a reality. That's something that's been on the drawing board for, I would say, several years, and something that we're really, really excited about, and that should be done here in June. The nice thing about that is that's just going to be a facility that is going to provide our outdoor sports a place to practice indoor. What's changed since this building was built, the Coliseum in Cunningham Hall back in 1973, tremendous vision in building this facility. However, you know, it wasn't designed with the idea of us having this many athletes. We're up near 500 athletes now. And the fact that they train year-round. You know, there used to be down seasons and winter was off, but now it's a year-round training process, as well as the weights, you know, that everybody does year-round now. So it created the need, because this facility wasn't designed for indoor track, to be in here practicing and throwing the hammer throw in a closet in the back gym, and the javelin into a tarp upstairs, and you know, the different things that we do to get by right now. And so with the creation of this facility, all of our outdoor sports, for example, men's, women's soccer, baseball, softball, track, indoor, outdoor, women's, men's, I'll leave somebody out, of course, but the number of outdoor sports that we have, primarily from November to April, we'll have this facility, which is going to include 65 yards of artificial turf. It'll look like a football field, but the mentality of that was to create a large open space.
Right.
But it does take the shape and form of a football field. It will have the full width of a football field. It will be marked like a football field, and it'll be 55 yards long with an end zone, which is 10 yards. So it'll have 65 yards of artificial turf. It'll have 3 lanes of running track down both sides of it. It'll have batting cages dropped from the ceiling. Each of the outdoor programs will have a storage unit inside there to where they open a garage door and come right into it. So we're very, very excited about that and what that's going to mean to the... Now, it's not air conditioned, and that's why it's designed to work in the winter months or in inclement weather prior to that.
Right.
Football practice might be out there in September and get a big rain. I doubt it, but it could happen. And if they had a big rain going on, they could move inside and have football practice. So
You're stoked, aren't you?
I'm very excited about this. But we've drawn it up. So many years back, we wanted to do something like this, and thanks to Dr. Hammond and the Bickles and Schmitz, I think those are the people that really made this possible and made this a reality. And so we've gotten to the point now where it's almost done, and we just can't hardly stand it anymore. But in addition to that facility, on that facility is a 5,000 square foot weight room, which we will use that part of it year round. That part is air conditioned. It's a lower ceiling, and it's connected, but it's a separate part. But
fantastic.
Again, that's been the big project. But as that's been going on, then we also had the opportunity to move in and replace the artificial turf down at Larks Park, which that was a great project that got completed this fall. And again, that was due to some generosity of Laverne and Jane Shoemaker here in town, Ron and Lila Nelson here in town. They're named on the field. It's Shoemaker Nelson Field, which is nice. Don't take credit for that.
I like it.
Yeah. And then Ryan Wassinger, who's an alumni of Fort Hays, who's from Russell, lives in Kansas City now. But the Wassinger family made a major contribution to that as well. So we've had such great support, from people outside to make some of these projects a reality. And that's been the really rewarding part. When you talk about people like Bickles and Schmitz, but to get to know these people better through their generosity like this, it really, really makes an impact on someone like me to see how they think and what they're about, and I'm amazed by them.
You take me on a little video tour when that's complete. How about?
I'd love to do that. I would love to do that. It's going to be very, very exciting.
Sounds great. Let's talk about the sports. You've been a pretty good sports year. Let's an obvious question I got to get to. Let's talk about the men's basketball team real quick. Did not make the tournament.
Yeah.
It raised a pretty good little debate across the sports world and across the community. Fact of the matter is, if I understand right, really there's a formula used, and according to the formula the committee put together, which our coach happens to serve on, the numbers just came up bad for us, didn't
they? They did, and it raises eyebrows, and we understand that. And you alluded to the fact that Mark Johnson, our men's basketball coach, actually was on the regional selection committee this year, so we got to see things firsthand how they work, and that was educational for us to some degree. But you're right. At the end of the day, the bottom line at Division II is different than Division I.
Explain that.
And Division I has a lot of intangibles involved. If you're playing in the Big 12 versus a lower versus the Missouri Valley, for example,
right,
you're going to get more love, and you may have the same record, and you're going to go, if you're in the Big 12, over the Missouri Valley, for example. You might have a worse record and be in the mid. There's no latitude for that in the Division II. It's strictly a numbers game. There's 4 or 5 columns that match up, and the numbers say you're in or the numbers say you're out. And so the things that we see on TV that all of us are experts on as it pertains to Division I don't apply to Division II, and that makes it kind of tough to explain sometimes. But at the end of the day, much like officiating, things like this can be pretty frustrating because you really can't do a lot about it. But the numbers say this or the numbers say that, and you're left out. Usually, like I was starting to say about officiating, usually there's a way that you could have done something different. We could have won a couple more games. we could have made another play or two, and that bad call by the official wouldn't have mattered.
Right.
I think that's the only way you can look at things to keep yourself sane sometimes, because it's pretty frustrating. And I know this, but it doesn't take anything away from the fact that both our men's and women's basketball programs did have great seasons. They did a great job and didn't quite get enough, but probably could have picked up a couple more here or there, and it wouldn't have been an issue. But what makes it frustrating is when you see someone else that's got a worse record that does get in, but because of the formula, they do get in ahead of you, and that's frustrating. But so it's according to what the formula said, we weren't supposed to be in. So the formula did produce the teams that were supposed to be in there. So if anything needs to change, it's the formula itself.
Right.
And I think that gets reviewed continually, and something that we probably need to continue to look at. But nonetheless, we've been talking about the MIAA conference for a number of years, and it's been a very challenging conference for us to grow into and be competitive in. And the fact that the men did win the MIAA conference this year, and they did win the conference tournament a couple years ago. Good success in the men's program. That's a big stride for us right now. In some ways, maybe more important than that regional bid. And what do I mean by that? We've had several regional bids. Mark Johnson's men team, basically, in the time I've been here, about every other year, they're going to that regional. But visibility-wise, the MIAA Conference Championship sometimes is more visible than playing at Tarleton State at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a regional basketball game, where a lot of people don't even know you're there.
Right.
Okay, so I think there's ways to this is a good step for us, and a big feather in his cap to win the conference title, especially with 15 teams with the strength of this league.
Let's talk about student athletes real quick.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I know you really want them all to be student athletes.
Absolutely.
That's what it's supposed to be about. How much more important does it become as we go down the road of knowing that athletic character along with that civic character of each one of those individuals that we're bringing in here?
Well, it's huge. The problem you run into, again, in an athletic department occasionally is you're going to run about 500 athletes through here, and you're going to have one occasionally do something stupid. That, unfortunately, is going to reflect the entire department. But what we quickly lose sight of, and it's frustrating, that's very frustrating, because you got 499 of them, or maybe 496 of them, maybe there's 4 of them, but that does reflect on your department, or the overall department, that particular program. I know the coaches get frustrated when we have an incident take place. Through the recruiting process, through talking to coaches, through parents, and you try to eliminate all of that, but it isn't any different than your general student that goes to school here. They're going to make mistakes.
I was about to offer up not to come to your side or anything, but if you took all the scholarship students that were out there, you'd probably find that it occurs with a group segment of them as well. It's inevitable, isn't it?
I think it's inevitable, and that's not something you want to ever condone or give up on trying for perfection. But the reality of it is inevitable, and every weekend you're having these people and places together where you put that many kids that age together, and to think something's not going to occasionally happen is probably a bit unrealistic. So,
right.
But we do want to, the message that we don't get out there probably as often as we should is what our kids do in service and community service. And to me, Todd, there's 3 things that we're trying to do here. This is our overall mission here. When you come here as a student athlete, we'd like to give you a good athletic experience. We certainly want you to have your education, but we also want to introduce you to the idea of service. And some of them have that in their background, some of them don't. But the community service projects that we're involved in various programs, we don't toot our horn on that a lot, because I don't think that's the reason we do it. And I think sometimes you wish you would do it a little more, but you don't do those things to be recognized for them, obviously. But you do them because our kids, sometimes they go, it's like pulling teeth to get them to go to do one of those, a Habitat for Humanity, a Ringing the Bells for Salvation Army, a Big Brothers Big Sisters. There's numerous events that we're involved in.
Right.
That people are probably unaware of, except a small population. But the satisfaction that comes with our student athletes helping whatever students or whatever people is that they're helping is immeasurable. And that's what we get back. And now they learn that process, and we want to expose them to that. And I always say, if we can do three things, if we can get them an education, we can introduce them to service, and we can have good athletic experience, good facilities, good coaches. We're doing what we can to put them out into the world.
Right. Fantastic. Let's head out of the athletic department here for a second. When you're not here doing athletics, which seems pretty dang limited as far as I can tell.
Right.
What do you enjoy doing? Do you have any hobbies or interests?
It really hadn't changed from when I was a kid.
Right.
I mean, I still like to fish. I don't do that a lot. But very engaged at the church along with my wife and a lot of things there. But really, up until now, my kids, who are all involved in athletics, this is our first year without anybody at home. So we're still kind of fumbling around trying to decide what we should do when we do have a little bit of time. And because it's been either involved with Fort Hays athletics or the kids' high school athletics and tracking them. So I've spent a lifetime doing that. And right now, here a couple weeks ago, we went to an encore show, so we're starting to get cultural.
Kind of getting out there, aren't you?
We're going to step out of the box and get out of athletics a little bit more as time goes on here, but we're just now starting to learn how to do that. So really not a lot outside of the athletic venue.
Excellent. You like to cook? Just out of curiosity?
Nope.
Just you'll do the eating part?
I like to eat,
okay.
Yeah, and I don't miss much of that. But I tell you, backyard stuff I like to cook, and on the grill. That's my domain. But outside of that, no, I've never been much on cooking because I just burn everything. But I do like the backyard grill, that barbecue stuff.
Tell me, do you have a favorite word?
Well, the first word that comes to my mind, and just going through what we're discussing now, is my favorite word would be gratitude. I think of what we're grateful for, and we can focus. We got two options, I guess, to look at things in the busyness and the challenges that we have, and we can either be grateful or we can be complaining. And I think so. Gratitude would be my favorite word because I'm in a lot better mood when I'm thinking about what's going right than I am what's going wrong. And you can choose that, I guess. I mean, I look at our indoor facility and getting that built, and you think there's a lot of headaches and projects, and you got to get these bid specs or this, that done, and this, that. But then you can focus on that for a little bit, and then all of a sudden you sleep and realize, wow, how grateful we are that we're even having the opportunity to build it.
Absolutely.
And that people came forward with the generosity, and that's not easy to do all the time. I don't stay in that mode all the time.
Right.
But boy, the more I can stay in the mode of being grateful for what we do have, rather than bitter about what we don't or how challenging things are to get done, then your spirits are certainly a lot better.
Absolutely. What about a least favorite word? You have one that sticks out?
Well, I'd turn that around. I would, the complaining, or I would just say the opposite of that.
Right.
Because I see it. I see those. Whether it's working here, whether it's outside in the community, there are those that choose not to look through the eyes of gratitude, but look through the eyes of being pessimist.
Right.
And I think everybody has part of that in them. Probably it's just a matter of trying to make a concerted effort to stay out of that mode of thinking. I think as soon as you get out of bed in the morning, you've got choices every day.
Well, I am grateful for your time today.
I'm grateful for you, Todd. I'm glad you're
Right.
around the community, and I've always enjoyed having you around here.
I appreciate your time. Thanks
Yep.
again.
Thanks,
Curtis
Todd.
Hammeke, Athletic Director of Fort Hays State University, our guest here on Hays Post and Talking with Todd.